I'm excited, a little nervous, but I'm sure it'll like go away eventually because I'm here with you.
It's no big deal. It's just, I mean, it's just two friends
Everything's
talking.
fine. Just casual talk.
Exactly.
Casual talk.
Cameras just so happen.
Just happen to be here. We just happen to be famous, but yeah.
All right, episode 4. We are here. We have done 3 dynamic episodes talking about things that men oftentimes think about, but maybe not always express. And this week we're going to get right into another topic that we oftentimes try to ignore even. And it's the topic of emotions and how those help construct masculinity as well. And I spelled it eMOSTions because we often think that our emotions are doing the most. They're extra, they're not a part of the logical factoring into our everyday lives. But if you go on ignoring these emotions, then you know what? I don't even need to really say it because we're going to get into it with my guest, Mr. David Jackson Jr., a name that will definitely be remembered in the history books. And I'm so happy that he came and sat down and talked with me, and I'm happy that he considers me a friend. And so let's get right into it and let's talk about it. I wanted to talk to you about emotions and things like that because partially because you are a Cancer. And we typically tend to, stereotype Cancers as like being these hyper emotional people, blah, blah, blah. But I've always really appreciated the Cancer zodiac sign.
Yes.
I've always been like, like they're emotional, but we tend to go like they're super sappy, and right?
Super like over the top.
Right.
Yeah.
And I get that from you sometimes.
Yes, absolutely.
But I think that emotions are a good thing. I think that, to be able to be so in tune with your emotions, especially as I think that you are, but as quite a few other Cancers that I've come in contact with, they're very in tune with their emotions, and they're very, their perception of other people's emotions sometimes is always really interesting to me as well, because I may perceive somebody to be sad, and you're like, I don't think that he's sad. I think that he's just very content with where he is right now, and you're not reading that as happy. And I'm like, whoa, okay, hold on.
Like an entirely different evaluation of a person's feelings.
Entirely different. So what are some of the ideas that you have in terms of like emotions and how to present them when you're like first meeting somebody?
Well, I think like the most important thing to do with your emotions, like in general, is to be authentic about them, is to be honest about them with yourself first, and then to try to bring them and show them and embody them in a way that allows you to be constructive about them.
Okay.
I think that emotions are like very, very intense things, very fragile things, very complicated things. So I think it's something that people like shy away from. But for me, emotions are extremely important. Like when I meet a person, I like to evaluate like their emotional state of being. And I know you really can't do that. Like you hear someone say that, but you really don't think about what it means. I mean, like, no, when I meet a person, I'm like, okay, they seem to be roughly, I don't know, happy, eccentric, what have you, it doesn't matter. But I think it's important because I think what's going on internally always manifests itself outwardly, eventually. So I think it's important to evaluate your emotions and the emotions of other people, and to display your emotions in a healthy yet authentic way. And I'm using the word authentic because I don't necessarily, like, people say, yeah, be a positive thinker, and I believe you should be, like, but I think emotions are sometimes anything but positive. Like sometimes emotions just are what they are. You just feel the way that you feel about a situation, and it's not necessarily, I feel great about this, I feel amazing about this. No, I feel like this about this, and this is just an emotion that I'm going to have, and I'm going to express it. And I think you should really be, authenticity is a big thing for me with emotions. That's all I'm gonna say, yeah.
Why do you think people automatically associate emotions as a negative versus emotions as a positive?
I think because we live in a world where a lot of traditional themes and a lot of traditional timelines and a lot of traditional understandings don't embrace the idea of embodying authentic emotions.
Okay.
Like we live in a world where emotions are not, they're not something that are, they're not necessarily celebrated. They're not encouraged. They're not sought. They are actually diminished. They are disregarded. And to be honest, people who are emotional are characterized people who are like, over the top. They're not in full control of themselves, things like that. But I think that emotions, like, they deserve their place. And I think that I think that you should be able to embody them in a certain way that allows you to fully express yourself. But your question was, what again?
My
Because I
question
kind of got
was,
like sidetracked.
yeah, no, my question is, I start off with asking you, do you think people hide their emotions? But
Oh, I do. No,
right.
that's what I was going to
Yeah,
say.
I did start off
No.
with that, but
Yeah.
the better question that came out of it was, why do, like, wow, you just made me lose my question.
You said, do I think people hide behind their emotions? And yes, because I think, no, this is what I think. I don't think people hide behind their emotions because I don't think you can hide behind your emotions. There's really no way to run from how you really feel about a situation. That's something else that I've learned. Like, hiding from your emotions or running from how you feel about something, you're really not. You're really just choosing to disregard something that is. I feel a certain way about something, so I'm going to act as if it isn't there. I know I'm upset, but I'm going to say I'm fine. You're only saying you're fine because you know you're not.
Right.
So you're not really hiding from something. And so I think the more you evaluate yourself and the more you get inside your own head, you realize, yeah, I'm really playing myself by acting like I don't have emotions, or I should hide them, or no, I don't feel that way, even though my subconscious and my inner self is saying, no, you really do feel that way.
Okay.
So I don't think people hide. I just think people choose not to process their emotions because no one's been taught, like, hey, this is the way that you should embody that emotion. Anger, frustration, grief, sorrow, love, happiness, joy. I think there's a proper way to embody every emotion. And I think that I'm better than most at embodying my emotions because I really do embody all of them as much as I can, but I learn from them. But I also think that I have a long way to go because I think like your emotions and learning your emotions and learning who you are through your emotions is a lifelong journey.
So what do you think the role emotions play in mental health and like?
I think the hiding from them or the disregarding them kind of breeds a lot of mental instability. I think people who are unwilling to address how they really feel about a thing or a person or a situation, circumstance, I think you can create an instability in yourself.
Right.
And so I think one way to create mental stability actually is to get very honest about how you feel about a situation. If you're broke, if you're not happy in a relationship, if you're not happy at a job, the first thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to look inside yourself and say, hey, I'm not happy about this, or I don't like this, or I don't want this for myself. And that is an emotion. That's a feeling that you're having about something. And I think once you acknowledge it, like everything else, that's when you're going to be able to move past it and therefore create the air of mental stability. Like, I'm not happy here, I'm not mentally stable here, but by acknowledging that I am in this state, I can get to the next state or a better state. So I think emotions play a role in both creating mental stability and instability.
Okay. Well, sometimes we just kind of write off mental illnesses, especially growing up in a southern, black household. Sometimes you write off mental illnesses as, nothing. You can just pray it away. You can go to church about it, stuff like that. But what is your outlook, I'm curious to know, on the current state of like mental illnesses, especially with things such as, these mass shootings that are going on in places of worship, education, leisure, like, because I have very strong feelings about it, for sure. But I wanna see your outlook before I give mine.
Well, I think people are sick. People are getting sick. And I don't mean sick as in physically sick. I mean emotionally, spiritually. People are sick. People are not well in the area of their life, which is their emotions and the impact that it's going to have on your entire health and your entire state of being. I think that a lot of people are over the top with their people are not in control of their emotions. They're not in control of themselves because they let their emotions control them instead of them controlling their emotions. And I think it causes all sorts of things: relationship problems, marriages, divorces. I mean, people getting in fights in restaurants, and just people shooting up schools. I think it's all because someone doesn't want to acknowledge that they have very real feelings about something. And I think one of my biggest, frustrations with mental health and the entire stigma that's put on it is that people don't prioritize therapy. I think that therapy should be something that everyone should be utilizing. If it's in your healthcare plan, if it's offered to you through your school, through your job, through any sort of I don't know, organization or entity that you interact with, I think if they offer you an opportunity to take care of your mind, just like you take care of your body, you take care of your finances, I think people need to start prioritizing their mental health and therapy for even the smallest of things. Just because you want to go talk to someone about how bad your day was, I think it's something that people should start exploring and people should have available to them. And if you don't have a therapist, you should have a therapist sort of friend. You have someone you should go to, someone or some people you can go to that you know that they're genuinely listening to what you have to say.
When I was going through my postgraduate depression, as I call it, I definitely was kind of self-reliant.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've always been this person that, like, when I have something, I can go within myself. I can talk to myself about things, and I can pull, you know, what I think my father may say, or what I think this friend may say, what I think my brother may say. You know, I can pull from these different sources, and I can, you know, then make my own kind of assumption, or I can make my own understanding on what it is I'm supposed to do. And here I am now after graduation, and I can't cope with these emotions that I'm going through, and I'm like, what is this? And you know, I mean, as a man, I feel weak because I'm crying myself to sleep at night, and I'm like, this isn't what being a man is about. You're not supposed to be crying yourself to sleep. You know, you're supposed to be able to deal with this. You're supposed to be able to, you know, get up out of bed, go to your job, and make money, you know, and act like everything's okay. Here I am, I don't have a job. I'm still in bed, you know, and I'm like, what is happening? So I think, like, you know, for me, like you said, having those friends that you can talk to, that you can ultimately kind of use as your therapy. Even for me, I want to put like the links and stuff in as well, but I literally went online and I was finding like research papers, and I mean, this goes back to like the core of who I am. Kind of like starting off in school, I learned research, and so I was like on Google Scholar looking up articles about depression, how to deal with it, and studies and stuff like that. So I'm reading these studies, I'm like, okay, so this therapist said to do this and stuff like that. So that was something that I learned from, and I think that we learn a lot of these things early on in life. What were some of your very first interactions with, you know, your family and dealing with emotions that taught you how you should deal with your emotions? What were some of those like for you?
Well, to be honest, I learned how to deal with emotions by watching not a lot, but too many of my family members not know how to deal with emotions in what I think is a constructive and a healthy way. A lot of people in my family are great. I'm not, you know, not to bring anything, you know, make it sound bad, but I'm just being realistic and being honest and authentic about it. I think what's, you know, kind of sparked an emotional, I don't know, turnaround in me was I said, okay, there are people that I see process things or don't process things this way. And I see that, in my opinion, it has this sort of effect on their state of being. I want my state of being to be better, so I need to be doing different things, like talking about my problems, talking about how I feel when things happen. But I did grow up with people in my family being rather stoic. I think that's a perfect word for it. Stoic, not unemotional, but not as emotional as you would expect, you know, people to be. And I think there also that the social circumstances were also different then. I think now we're living in a time where we have a generation of people who were able to have conversations about emotional, you know, stability, financial stability. We're able to have these sorts of conversations, and we're able to have them comfortably. I don't think that my grandmother or my grandparents or my parents, given the circumstances of their life, were in positions to talk about things like this in a comfortable setting, in a rehabilitative way. I think they were dealing with a myriad of things that were going on in their life and society that didn't prioritize these sorts of things. We prioritize things. Now we prioritize mental health, and we prioritize being people who want to talk about these sorts of things. But I couldn't say that's the same thing for, you know, older generations. So I think I also keep that in mind too, that maybe they're stoic to me, but to them they could think that it's absolutely normal, because I'm living a generation of people that we encourage each other to be as, you know, as vulnerable and as authentic as possible. when those weren't the focuses of generations before. They were focusing on having jobs, building families, buying homes, and doing whatever it took to survive. It was more so of a survival thing. And I think our generation is thriving, and a part of that thrive comes with, okay, we now have the luxury of being able to discuss emotional stabilities or the lack thereof. You know, we're able to talk about these things. So I think keeping that in mind too is helpful. When I look at my family, when I look at how they displayed emotion, I'm like, okay, this is what I've seen. This is what I also know about their abilities and their, I don't know, the tools they had. And so when I think about emotions and my family, I really think that it's something that's also, like I said earlier, it's evolving. Even now as I'm getting older, it's like I look at my grandparents. Even today I spent some time with my grandfather, and I just think emotionally different about him now. 16-year-old David watching my grandfather, and 23 turning 24-year-old David watching my grandfather is an entirely different experience now, because now I've had a different emotional experience growing up, and now I don't know, I'm just kind of looking at my grandfather in a different way. So it's just one of those things where I'm just like, I'm happy to be evolving in my emotional understanding of myself and the world and of those in my family. So who you are is a combination of a lot of things. And so when you think about masculinity, when you think about emotional performance in the world, I think you should just keep in mind that you are allowed to be more than just what you've told you're allowed to be. Especially men of color. You have to understand that you are allowed to be and show up in the world in more than one way, because that's what it means to be a human being, to show up in the world in billions, literally billions of different ways. So I think that that's something that I want people to take away from everything that I've said, is to just know that you are allowed to have emotions. You're allowed to embody being human in more than just a strict way, and it's healthy to be happy.
Yes. It is absolutely healthy to be
healthy to be happy.
Yes, as you say that with a smile on your face, a brilliant smile. No, I completely agree. I mean, I'm very happy that we were able to sit here and have this conversation.
Yes, I'm happy.
You know, I wish that we could have more of these. Many. You know, and have more people be able to sit in. Even, I mean, I have always wondered what it would be like to be a fly on the wall for some of our conversations, because sometimes we get really into them. But I mean, this is just but a taste. And I'm so thankful that you were able to stop by and help me out with this. You know, thank you for blessing the people with some of these tidbits of information. It's been absolutely amazing. Anytime. So yeah, I mean, there we go. Don't let your emotions get the most of you. Just get the most of your emotions. Yeah. And with that, we are going to sign off. So there you guys have it. Another great conversation with another great mind. And I want to thank you, David, for coming and sitting down and talking with me once again. Also, something that David said was men seeking therapy. He talked a little bit about that. I want to talk about it more because as Mr. Florida United States, my platform is mental health with an emphasis on men. So I want to send 3 guys to therapy for free for 1 month through the online service Talkspace. The only way that I can do this is with your help. If you guys would please be gracious enough to click the GoFundMe link in the description box below, read up on all the details on how the people are going to be selected, so on and so forth, and donate. Any amount helps, and I would love to reach my goal of $1,000, because then what we can do is we can actually send more than 3 guys to therapy. It only will cost about $600 to send 3 guys to therapy for 1 month for Talkspace. But if I can do 1,000, then I can send approximately 5 people. So I would love to be able to send more than what I have envisioned for my own journey. If you guys would please follow the link and donate. And that is also a great segue into our female feedback segment for this week, Miss Razi Abraham, who is also a therapist, who wanted to chime in on the conversation.
Hey Corey, it's Razi checking in with your female feedback on eMOSTions. So in my current role as a therapist at a psychiatric treatment facility, I work with youth who have experienced traumatic events and who have behavioral issues. So emotion regulation and effective expression is something that we work on all the time. And I think one of the things that's super key in achieving those things is a sense of self-awareness and being able to identify your body's warning signs and meeting those needs. So we do this regularly with our physical needs, right? So if we're hungry, we're recognizing that our stomachs are growling and we're getting something to eat. If we're sleepy, we're recognizing that we're yawning and that our eyes are droopy and drowsy and we're going to take a nap. So why not the same for our emotional needs as well? It's important to identify what personal warning signs our bodies exhibit so that we're able to recognize them and take a step back and say, hey, what do I need right now? So for example, if we're fidgeting, we might be nervous and we may need to go on a walk or separate ourselves from whatever's triggering our nerves. If we're anxious, we may need to take deep breaths. So in order to do that, being self-aware is going to be super helpful. So people saying that men expressing themselves and being able to share their emotions is weak, I think that that's inaccurate and incorrect, and I feel like it takes a lot of self-control and that sense of self-awareness in order to express yourself appropriately and safely. See you, Corey.